lot.
Balance is absolutely everything.
It is absolutely everything.
High yield comes from uniformity. It doesn't come from size.
Gotcha. And so I think it's super important that guys, I didn't run a lot of gallons of actual fertilizer in my starter. It was more of I'm going to run a lower rate of this because I want the plant to focus on these nutrients at this time frame, as well as some sugars and zinc and some stress mitigators, things like that, and the carbons, and making sure, trying to keep a balance there to the best of my ability that I have learned thus far to make that decision on my farm. And so, it's interesting. Johnny mentioned, he goes, if you are doing, this is total rabbit trail. If you do a foliar feed that pretty much signals to your plant, hey, go get this, here's this foliar feed. This is what basically telling the plant, this is what I want you to do, root exudate, to change whatever. I want you to pull a lot of phosphorus right now. But you're low in phosphorus in your ground. You could really be not doing any good here.
No, you're telling it to get something it doesn't have, so you're wasting a lot of energy.
Right. Yeah, wasting energy. Would you say even confusing the plant to a degree?
Absolutely. Once it starts to stretch its roots out and realize that none of this is around, then it's going to go into more of a survival response. So then it's going to start to cannibalize itself. Absolutely.
Got it. Okay. Rabbit trail over. But we've got the in-furrow option. And then we've got, is there anything you want to add to the in-furrow that just pops out?
Just in-furrow, we want uniform seeds. So we want everything. We want all of those seeds to grow basically on the same day. Now, they're not going to germinate tomorrow, but let's say they germinate in a week or 2 weeks, whatever it is, depending on soil temperatures. You're going to have very little control over that. But you want the first seed in the field, the first plant in the field, to literally come up in a day of the last plant in that field.
Sure.
And if you take some of those metal flags with the different colors on them, the first day you see it pop, you flag 10. Second day, flag 10 with a different color. Third day, you flag 10 with a different color.
Yeah.
You go back before the combine rolls later in the year, and you'll find that first day that they all came up, you're going to have some big boss ears on that plant.
Okay.
That middle flag, some will have ears, some won't.
Much more variance.
Yeah, and that's only a day later. And then by the third day, you will not have ears on those plants, and those will just be weeds in the field.
Gotcha.
Because we don't need a bunch of corn plants without ears.
Right.
So uniformity.
No, I don't want any without ears.
The other one that I know because we love equipment in the field,
Yeah.
And a lot of these planters, I go to Farm Progress every year just to look at this, right? And these planters, they could drive down the fields at phenomenal rates, to plant. Drive slow. And here's a tip that I could give you. It's not going to cost, you don't have to buy anything. But if you can, and I know you don't want to hear this, but if you just lower that speed, give me 1 mile an hour less, you will see such an increase in uniformity.
I have a good friend who's an NCGA guru. He plants his contest field at 2.5 miles an hour.
So, exactly.
With a high-speed planter.
Exactly.
Quote, high-speed planter. Because he is going for perfect seed drop. He's not, that is his number one focus. Yes, he's very in tune to his in-furrow, his 2x2, everything else. But his number one focus is dropping those seeds exactly evenly apart.
It's so true.
Yeah.
Lately, probably over the last few years, I've been getting more into growing more yield with less input. So I'm trying to see what that true efficiency line is.
Yeah.
But when I started in the industry and I left academia, I was all into the yield guys. And I would tour the world with these guys and just see all their tricks. They're all driving ridiculously slow.
Interesting.
Yeah, they are. And now I know, too. I think farms are getting bigger. Correct me if I'm wrong. But, some of these guys could be 5,000 to 10,000 acres of land. And I understand the challenges you're going to have, seeding all of that at the right time.
Yeah.
But, even too, and this is another unpopular idea, and we kind of missed we miss the timing. Everything's planted around here now. But I kind of like the late seeded stuff better than the early seeded stuff. And I think just that few degree soil temperature, it's given me much better germination and a much stronger teenager in that field.
Well, and that's I'm never the first one to plant around home, and I try not to be, just because even this year, man, we were having, it was going to be 70 during the day and 25 at night, and then 46 is the high the next day, and then 32. And I'm like, man, why would we do that?
The plant has no idea what it's doing when it's like that.
Yeah.
It works on a temperature differential.
Okay.
So the differences in temperature from one place to the next is how it determines its source to sink relationship, among other things. There's growing degree days. There's a lot of things here. I'm oversimplifying it. But temperature, hot to cold, or the change in temperature, is how the plant's really starting to regulate. When you get those spring flip-flops, sometimes you'll see the actual cotyledon or the radicle grow in a curved direction.
Yes.
Because you just tricked it.
Sure.
You changed its delta T, its temperature differential from one place to the next. We actually, a few years back, we bought these little thermocouple things.
Okay.
And we were inserting them into different parts of the plant. I couldn't do this as a seedling, right? Because it's so tiny.
Yeah.
But like when the plant gets older, we were doing it with boron, molybdenum, and source to sink relationship. And did you know the ear and the kernel, like right there where it's dividing, it's colder than the leaf. So it's actually moving the sugar based on a change in temperature from hot to cold points. And you strengthen this with boron, molybdenum, and some amino acid chelates that we use.
Yep.
And you're actually able to see the temperature go down where the sink is, where the sugars are going.
So it's even temperature regulation in a
Inside.
completely growing crop.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And water.
Fascinating.
Water
water.
does that. So why does drought screw us up so much? That's one of the reasons. You don't have enough moisture. The plant can't regulate its temperature. It basically has a fever.
Okay. Interesting. Wow. Okay. That's a whole different. Now I'm like,
Yeah.
way to scrap this.
New idea.
Yeah. Guys, if you've liked the information that you've seen so far, go ahead and check out the full-length podcast on our YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe there. It's also on all the major podcast platforms. We're constantly dropping info and more content on all the social media platforms, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, etc. Check it out for a lot more content.